Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I am shocked. I am shocked that I have not filmed an Inky Minutes review about this ink. This has been one of my favorite inks for such a long time, and I recently included it in a video and couldn't provide a link to my review. Realized I'd never done one, so I thought I'd quickly jump on and do one now. The ink we're looking at is this. This is 1864 Blue Black from Diamine. This is part of the 150th anniversary series. So we've now got the 160th anniversary series, but this 1864 Blue Black from the 150th is one of my absolute favorite inks of all time. It's my favorite, or at least most used Blue Black. I think it comes in this amazing triangular glass bottle. It's a 40ml bottle. That's just the label I put on the top so I can, recognize that it's sight in my drawer. But it's a really solid, very, very dark blue black ink. Now, there are a lot of really great blue black inks out on the market. I've got so many blue blacks that range from the quite blue end in things like Waterman Waterman Mysterious Blue, and things like Pilot Blue Black. Through to sort of mid-range things like the Colorverse Blue Black, which I really, really enjoy. You've got things that lean on the teal end, like Hongdian Blue Black, or grey end, like the Monteverde Blue Black. And then you've got things that lean into the purple, dark blue end of Blue Black. And this is one of those. Now, I will say from the outset, this is not one of those traditional Blue Blacks. That, it's not iron gall, it's not sort of got, sort of water resistance or anything like that. It doesn't change from blue to black as it oxidizes on the page over a few days. It's just a straight up, really beautiful dark blue black color that I really enjoy using in my pens. If you're after something more traditional, even Diamine Registrar's Blue Black might be the way to go. Another fantastic ink, great color. But let's look at this one today. So here it is on a colouring card. It's got, as I said, a nice sort of purple, dark blue leaning sort of blue black. In everyday writing, as you'll see in the writing samples I've done here, it almost could look black on the page, and it's only in the shading that you see blue, particularly in a wet pen. And so this is quite a dry part of the sample, and then that's sort of like the more saturated version. There is a little bit of red copper sheen there as well. So, cool color. Let's now check it out on paper. So here it is on 52 GSM Tolma River paper, the good old stock that we know and love in a Galen leather everyday notebook from a few years ago now. You can see here lots of that purple, dark blue, grey, sort of leaning blue black. I really like it. In fact, it looks bluer in the swatch than it does in the little swipe there. Now, I had this in my Jinhao 10, which is their retractable pen with a fine nib. The second one I have of it, the coffee gradient version, which has proved to be a better fix than the original one I had. And I also did a writing with glass dip pen just to sort of show some nice sort of solid wet writing as well. That fine is pretty wet, but it is still a fine. So you can see in the writing, it does lean on the very, very black end of blue black. And I like that. I like it because you only get the hints of blue occasionally, and on sort of on lower end paper, it looks a little bluer. And so it just adds that little bit of personality. Like on first glance, you don't even notice what color it is. And then just with a little bit of attention, you see sort of what you're getting. As I said, it's got low water resistance. It does move around a lot. It's a pretty saturated ink in a lot of ways. Not super, super saturated, but definitely saturated enough. But you can see a tiny little bit of the writing left behind, but you do lose some of it almost altogether. Now, this retails in Australia for $22.95 for the 40ml bottle from Pole Prediction. Pole Prediction is where I like to get my Diamine inks in Australia. The prices are always pretty solid. It is a little bit more expensive than the standard inks. So for 80, you'd pay, I think, around that, or maybe just slightly less than that for an 80ml bottle of the regular Diamine inks. Now, you do get that cool triangular bottle that when you have 8 of them, and there were 8 in the series, it formed a circle, which is kind of cool, but you are paying a little bit more for the ink. So that's $18 US, and that was the price, I think, at one of the major US retailers, and about £8.50, and I think that was from Colt Pens from memory in the UK. So There are, in Australia, I like to go to Pole Prediction. Otherwise, I generally tend to buy my Diamine inks from Colt Pens. I think they have a great range and once again, really, really solid prices. If we look at the reverse of this page, nothing has come through from the writing from the glass dip pen or the Jinhao or anything. A little bit sort of from the swatch wanting to come through, but it's a really well-behaved ink. It is a strong ink. It is dark, it is saturated, but you can see here, at least on Tomoe River, it's performing pretty well. Let's now look at it on some lower end paper. So this is the student notepad paper from Spyrex. You can see you get a little bit more of the dark blue, not so black. As it sort of washes out, you get a little bit more of that traditional blue-black color. It is feathering quite a lot on this paper. It is a wet ink. It shows that like even in the swatches here, in the little swipes here on this paper, which is super absorbent, you're still getting a bit. So it is pretty wet. And then on the reverse, we are getting a lot of bleed. This is what I would expect from most paper in terms of the amount of bleed. In fact, it bled so much through here that it went onto the page behind it that I was writing on top of. So bleeding a lot. That's from the glass dip pen, so that's writing pretty wet. And this is not fountain pen friendly paper, but that is what you get. Then here on the office copy paper, in fact, I've got it next to there, just for the sake of comparison, the Retro 51 Blue Black, which is quite a lot bluer, like noticeably bluer. And in fact, the Blue Black from Diamine here almost looks purple alongside it. But you can see it writes really nicely. There is a bit of feathering, as you would expect on this paper. It's not holding insanely tight. And on the back, we are getting a fair amount of bleed. You know, it's comparable to other inks on this page, but we are getting that here on this not fountain pen friendly paper. And then here we have it on Rhodia 80 GSM paper. Low water resistance, and the swatch looks good and solid, really wet from that glass dip pen. Nice and wet still from the Jinhao 10 with that fine nib. The line is holding beautifully tight here. It's really beautiful on this paper. Once again, very dark, and in a drier pen, you would probably get more of the blue. These are writing on a fairly wet end of the scale. This is the kind of color you're going to get in a drier pen. It does change depending on the pen you're using it. Most inks will, in fact. And the reverse of this page, a couple of spots have come through here. It is it performs well, but it does require good quality paper. Now, I use this a lot on Baron Fig paper. I use this a lot on Midori paper. I use this a lot on Tomoe River, and of course here on Rhodia and Clairefontaine. It does perform well, but it does need good quality paper. But when it's writing well, this is a beautiful, beautiful ink, and it'll perform pretty well in most pens. So here is the chromatography for this ink. You can see lots of pink moving through to like grays and darker blues, and then a lovely line of light blue across the top. We do see hints of those pinks and reds in the lighter shading. As I said, there's like little notes of purple and stuff that sort of come through. That's creating that. But that beautiful rich dark blue through the top there, we are getting a lot of that, and it's a really lovely ink. So now for the color comparison, once again on the color ring card, I want to show it alongside a couple of other sort of dark blue or blue black inks. The first I'm going to put alongside is standard Diamine Blue Black. Now you can see this is labeled as a blue black ink. You can see how light and how bright and blue that ink really is. This is like Pilot Blue Black or Waterman Mysterious Blue or even Sailor Blue Black. They lean very, very blue, in fact. Then you get something like Lamy Blue Black, which is more of that sort of grey, darker end. I really like Lamy Blue Black. It's a little undersaturated for my taste, which is sort of why I tend to lean towards the 1864 Blue Black there. And then we get Robert Oster Thunderstorm. This is one of my most underrated blue black inks. I think this is such a beautiful, dark, rich, moody ink. And I think it's just an absolutely gorgeous color. Very different to the 1864 Blue Black, but as you can see, it does, these are rich, dark colors. One thing I will say now also about the Diamine is that because it is a slightly saturated ink, and slightly dark, it can take a little bit more to clean out of pens. However, it won't stain. It's a good quality ink, made safe for fountain pens, but it may just take a little bit more work. So if you're using things like back fillers or piston fillers, just make sure you really clean it out properly. Otherwise, it is going to contaminate, in terms of color, the inks that go in next. So this was the incredibly beautiful and an absolute favourite of mine. I'm biased towards this ink. I think it's amazing. 1864 blue black ink. You can see it performs differently on different papers. It does require, sort of good quality paper, particularly in a wet pen. If you're writing with a drier pen, you could get away with this on other kinds of paper without any doubt, but it is such a wonderful, beautiful color. I really enjoy it, and I love my blue blacks, and this has been a long time favorite. So thank you for watching this Inky Minutes review. I hope you found it interesting and useful. Please like and subscribe, hit the notifications button, all that kind of stuff. If you've got products you think I should be looking at, or if there's a way you'd like to support the channel, I would love to hear from you. In the meantime, enjoy your inks, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.